So season 1 of Dexter Resurrection has just finished, and you know me, I love Dexter, and Dexter content always does well on my channel all the time, so you know I had to make a review on this. But yeah, this season was good, pretty good. I wouldn't necessarily say it was anything amazing compared to season 1 through 4 of Dexter, but definitely better than season 5 through 8 and Original Sin. Probably New Blood as well, but I'm still deciding on that because the ending of New Blood sucks, so probably Resurrection actually. Personally, I thought that the first 4 episodes of Dexter Resurrection was honestly really good. I thought the start was really solid with all the cool cameos. That actually made sense why we see all of the characters. We also see all of like the return of Harry and Dexter. Weirdly in this season, Harry and Dexter have such a confusing dynamic where it may be that he's always appearing in one episode, or some episodes he's just vanished. I will also admit that the comedic aspect they took between Dexter and Harry was pretty funny too. Like this one scene where Harry just slapped Dexter's head, which was actually pretty funny. The main highlight for the first 4 episodes was probably the build up towards the main serial killer group, with all of them being marketed like they were going to be interesting and enjoyable characters. But no, that was not true. Yeah, instead all of the serial killer group is basically just ended up being one-off characters that are boring and generic villains Dexter has to kill off. I'd say the only villains that really interested me a lot this season was Prater and Charlie, since they actually had a character to them and they didn't just feel like one-off characters. I'd honestly go far and say that they even made Mia seem like she was going to be interesting because Dexter was interested in her, and it would have been cool if we had Mia be a serial killer who's like Dexter and enjoys killing, but most of her life she's killed bad people. It doesn't really make sense to me why they just ended up making her such a generic character that also gets killed off in such an annoying and just boring way too. I have to mention as well that none of these characters are even remotely a struggle for Dexter. I think that's the whole point. They tried to go for that tone where Dexter was the complete opposite of them and they were all amateurs compared to Dexter, which I understand, but that also means these characters feel really boring and honestly don't have much of an impact to the story. I am aware about Al as well, how he escaped too, but if I'm being honest, that wasn't even mainly Dexter's fault. It was more just unluckiness. Episodes 5, 6, and 7 honestly just didn't hit for me anymore, and as I kept thinking about them, this is honestly where I think the season started to sink down, because it just became boring and nothing too insane was happening. I will say though that the biggest hype that had me around this whole season was definitely Dexter Harrison's dynamic, and that like them re-meeting each other after Harrison had shot Dexter in the previous events of New Blood. And I will be honest, yeah, their dynamic in this show is really good and it's handled in a very realistic way. I know a lot of people hate Harrison for whatever reason in Dexter New Blood, but from what I know, a lot of people actually like him a lot more in Resurrection, which is good to hear. And I can honestly agree that yeah, he is a lot better in Resurrection, but he was still so overhated in New Blood personally. I will say this though, that the cameos are really great to see in Resurrection and are kind of sort of fan service, but they actually make sense to why we see them. And it's honestly really nice the moments we have for them in the scenes. For example, Quinn and Masuka's return and their final talk with Angel was honestly really cool. And funny how it just felt like it didn't old Dexter, and even the return of Dokes, Miguel and Arthur in the first episode of Dexter Resurrection, saying how he needs to protect his son, or you know, everyone he goes around he just hurts and ends up dying. Also a cameo with Brian too in the ending. I will admit that this season does 100% pick itself back up in episode 8 and 9 because those episodes were honestly great. Especially episode 9 because that was for sure the best episode in the season and a top 5 for me. Main reason is because of the death of Angel, and yeah, it's a very good death. I do think it could have been a bit better, but I think I understand the way they wanted it to go. It's not emotional, but it's more shocking. Like they tried to recreate what season 4 did and it actually works really well. But of course not as well as season 4, but still great. Another thing I will say before I talk about the finale is that yeah, for sure, if I had to compare this to You Season 5, yeah, it's way better. I'm not even going to get into my thoughts on You Season 5, just know that I did not like it, and at least Resurrection has a lot of better moments, and speaking of a way better finale. The finale of Season 1 in Dexter Resurrection is actually very solid. Thank gosh that it's a good ending, because in case it gets cancelled, since it's already talked about getting a second season, but you know, it's already getting talked about a second season, so I don't think it's going to get cancelled. But in case it does, yeah, it's a very solid ending. I feel as if my only gripes with this ending is how it just feels really fast and very fast paced. But either way, it's still really good. I liked Prater's conclusion. I also have to mention, but Prater, I actually really like his whole aspect of a villain, how he's like a fanboy who's just very interested in serial killers. I also feel like it works really well in his conclusion. I really like Charlie's conclusion too, because she's just like a, you know, she just works for Prater and she's just doing it for like the money and stuff and for a sick mum. I thought that was solid, also like a solid conclusion to the serial killer gang. Besides those people though, everyone else was completely wasted. If I wanted something like, obviously like I said though, besides Charlie and Prater, that like the other people's ending, the other people in the serial killer gang is just very, just I just don't like it. It's not great. If I had to be honest, I think what works really well in the Resurrection ending is how Dexter's very desperate, and it actually makes more sense in this than his events in New Blood, because in New Blood he was desperate, but it just kind of didn't make sense a lot of the time. In Resurrection though, it actually makes sense because he's in like a very, not trying to spoil, but he's in like a very, you know, messed up state, and he's like basically on the verge of getting caught. So yeah, I actually liked how he was desperate in this one because it actually made him more, like, it was more of a valid reason than in New Blood. If I had to be honest about the ending though, one thing I wish we got was that Quinn and Masuka find out about the reaction to Angel's death. I also feel like they could be saving it for season 2, but I don't know, I kind of wish we still saw it. I also have to mention as well that I did not understand who the hell the New York Ripper was, as it just didn't make much sense to me. If they're teasing someone for like the next villain, maybe in the potential season 2, I don't know, but I'm not sure where Dexter's gonna take now. But for now, this is all we know. So yeah, that's all of Dexter Resurrection, and that's all my thoughts. I thought it was a very solid season. Nothing too crazy, like I said, but it was a very solid one. It was good. So I'm gonna give Dexter Resurrection Season 1 a 7.5 to 8 out of 10. Man, when will this show end? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.